All right, diving in. Today, it's all about virtual reality and, not just any VR. We're talking immersive VR, IVR, and how it's changing the game for education and training.
Yeah, and it's pretty wild to think just how fast this whole thing has taken off.
Yeah.
I mean, going from like sci-fi fantasy to something that experts are predicting will be used by something like 15 million learners by like next
Those
year.
8 million.
It really makes you think.
Yeah.
What's the real potential here?
Totally, totally. And that's what we're going to unpack today. So you, our awesome listener, you sent us some really cool research excerpts from an article on the cognitive affective model of immersive learning, CAMIL for short.
Catchy.
Right. So this model, published back in 2021, it kind of gives us this roadmap, this framework for understanding what actually makes IVR learning, tick, why it works.
Absolutely.
Think of it as your express lane to understanding all these key factors at play in IVR learning, and without getting totally lost in the technical jargon.
Right, cutting through the hype to
Yeah.
understand the fundamental principles of how we learn in these really unique environments.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it actually ties into this fascinating long-standing debate about learning itself. Remember Marshall McLuhan and that famous line, "The medium is the message."
Oh, classic.
Right, like the idea that the technology, the actual tool we're using to learn shapes how we learn.
Right.
But then you had other folks, like Clark, who argued that the medium is really just a delivery system.
Just a vehicle.
Just a vehicle, right.
Yeah.
So it's the instruction that matters.
Right.
So where does CAMEL fit into all of this?
Well, CAMEL takes, I think, a more integrated view. It's saying that good teaching methods, of course, those are crucial, but the special capabilities of a medium like IVR, what they call affordances, those really interact with the teaching methods in a big way.
Interact.
It's not just what you're teaching, it's how the IVR experience allows that teaching to land differently.
To land differently. I like that. I like that. Okay, so let's get a bit more concrete here. When we say immersive virtual reality, what are we actually talking about?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
what's the difference between, say, just looking at a 3D model, a 3D walkthrough on a website versus putting on a headset?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
big difference, right? IVR, especially through, a head-mounted display,
Yeah.
even more advanced things like a KVE system, that offers a much deeper sense of immersion than just viewing something on a screen.
Hmm.
So immersion here, we're talking about how vivid, how all-encompassing the system is and its ability to kind of make the real world just fade away.
Fade away.
With a headset, you've got head and body tracking. So the virtual world is moving with you.
Naturally.
Naturally. Plus, you've got stereoscopic rendering.
Mhm.
That means you're getting slightly different images to each eye, just like in real life.
Oh, interesting.
And that's what gives you that sense of depth.
Okay.
And the field of view is so much wider than a regular monitor.
Mm.
It fills your whole vision.
Oh, wow. So it's not just seeing this virtual environment. It's feeling like you're actually physically present there.
Exactly. You're in it.
You're in it. Yeah.
And so CAMEL identifies two core psychological affordances that come out of all this technology.
Yeah.
And that's presence, that feeling of being there
Yeah.
in the virtual world, and then agency. The sense that you can act and you can control things within that environment.
Presence and agency, those sound just intuitively like they would be, super important for learning. How do those technical features, how do they lead to these feelings?
Well, it all starts with that immersion.
Okay.
The sheer richness of the sensory information you're getting, that just fuels that feeling of presence.
Okay.
And then there's what we call control factors. So that's how much influence you have over the world, how quickly your actions are reflected back to you,
Yeah. Okay.
and how you're interacting with it. As hand controllers, voice commands, your actual body movements. And then there's this idea of fidelity of control. That's how accurately your real-world movements translate into what you're doing virtually.
Oh, I see.
And finally, there's something called representational fidelity. That's how realistic the environment actually looks and how smoothly the view changes as you're moving around.
Yeah.
The better all of these technical elements are, the stronger those feelings of presence and agency tend to be.
Got it. So the tech gives us this feeling of being there, being in control, and then how do those feelings actually lead to learning? CAMEL identifies 6 different factors, right? Let's start with the first one, situational interest. What is that?
So situational interest, that's that like immediate focus, that emotional response you have when something just grabs your attention.
Grabs you.
Grabs you, yeah.
Yeah.
And CAMEL argues that both presence and agency can really spark this. Imagine you're learning about the human heart,
Right.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
And you could virtually shrink down and walk through the chambers. You can see the valves opening and closing. You hear the blood flowing.
Hmm.
That experience, that feeling of actually being there, so much more powerful than just looking at a 2D diagram in a book.
Right. Right.
Or imagine you're doing a virtual chemistry experiment and you get to choose, which chemicals to combine, how to conduct the experiment. That sense of autonomy, that can make you so much more invested in the outcome.
That's cool.
Research shows that higher levels of presence are linked to greater interest in the subject matter.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. If you feel like you're actually in the learning experience, of course you're going to be way more engaged. Okay, what about intrinsic motivation?
Okay, so intrinsic motivation, that's that drive to learn because you just find the activity itself rewarding.
Right.
Like you're doing it for the pure joy of learning.
Right, right, for the love of it.
Exactly. And again, presence is a big factor here. Specifically what's called social presence. That's the feeling that you're interacting with virtual instructors, other learners, like they're actually there with you.
Got it.
And getting positive feedback, having meaningful interactions, even in a virtual environment, that can really satisfy those core needs for competence and connection that we all have. Those are key drivers of intrinsic motivation.
I see.
But agency is also huge here. Giving learners choices in a virtual space about what they want to explore, how they want to solve problems, that can boost their sense of autonomy. It makes the learning more enjoyable, more personally valuable. And studies have actually found that well-designed IVR experiences lead to higher levels of enjoyment and that internal drive to learn.
So feeling present with others, even if it's virtually, and having that control over your learning journey, those make you more naturally motivated. Okay, next up, self-efficacy. That's that belief in your own ability to succeed at something.
Exactly.
Huh.
And this is where that feeling of being there, being in control, can be so powerful.
Yeah.
So CAMIL draws on the work of Albert Bandura here. He emphasized that our own experiences of mastery, actually accomplishing things, that's a key source of self-efficacy. When you're in a really immersive virtual environment and you successfully complete a task, it can feel like a real achievement.
Like you actually did it.
You did it. And it boosts your belief that you can do more of that.
Oh, I see.
And then that feeling of agency, right? You're
Yeah.
directing your actions, you're seeing the results. That just reinforces that sense of competence.
That's cool.
And this is a much more direct, visceral experience than just reading about something or watching someone else do it.
So it's like, learning to ride a bike. You can read about it, but until you get on and actually do it,
Exactly.
you don't really know.
And meta-analyses have shown that more interaction, more control in these kinds of simulations, that leads to greater self-efficacy.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, the fourth factor here is embodiment.
Embodiment.
This sounds a little more abstract.
Yeah. Embodiment is that feeling of being inside and having and controlling a body, even though it's a virtual one.
Interesting.
So think about it. You see a hand in front of you, and it moves when you move your hand. You start to feel like that virtual hand is your hand.
Okay.
And CAMIL links this to self-presence, the feeling that your virtual self is really you in the virtual world.
Okay, yeah.
And agency plays a big role too, right?
Yeah.
That feeling that you're controlling this body, you're seeing the consequences of your actions. And this connects to the broader idea of embodied cognition, this concept that our physical experiences really shape how we think and how we learn. So in IVR, seeing, controlling a body that moves with you, it deepens that sense of this is me in this virtual world.
Yeah.
Think about learning a physical skill like, surgery.
Okay, yeah.
If you have a virtual hand that moves exactly like your real hand, and you can feel the resistance of, virtual tissue through haptic feedback, that's going to make you feel like you're actually performing this surgery.
Wow, that's amazing.
And that leads to a deeper understanding than just watching a video.
It makes it real. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about something that can be a real challenge in any learning environment. Cognitive load.
Oh yeah, cognitive load, a big one.
Huge.
So cognitive load theory tells us that our working memory, the part of our brains that holds information, has limited capacity. And CAMIL points out that while high presence can be incredibly engaging, all that visual richness, all the stuff happening, well, that can actually increase something called extraneous cognitive load.
Extraneous.
And that's mental effort that's not helping you learn.
Oh, so it's like trying to study with loud music playing or something. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
That noise isn't part of what you're trying to learn. It just makes it harder to focus.
Mhm.
So in IVR, you might have, really fancy visuals, unnecessary interactive elements, and those can be distracting. They can be that loud music that's pulling you away from the
Oh,
learning.
interesting.
And too much agency can also be a problem, right? If you give learners total freedom to explore anything, well, their working memory might get overloaded.
Right.
So the key is to design IVR experiences that focus on the essential content and minimize anything that could distract from that.
Okay, yeah. So while the immersiveness can be a huge benefit, designers have to be really careful not to overload the learner with too much information or too many choices.
Absolutely.
Got it. And finally, we have self-regulation, our ability to manage our own learning process.
Yeah, self-regulation, that's a really interesting one in the context of IVR. So on the one hand, a strong sense of social presence in a virtual learning environment that could potentially help with self-regulation.
How so?
Well, think about interacting with a virtual instructor or a virtual peer. They can provide guidance, they can give feedback, they can help you stay on track.
Okay, yeah.
But then on the other hand, high presence and agency, they're so engaging that they can sometimes actually hinder self-regulation because learners can become so absorbed in the experience that they're not really thinking about their learning process, right? They're just exploring and having fun, but
Yeah.
they're not reflecting on what they're learning or how well they're understanding it.
Right. I see.
So here's where good instructional design is essential. It's all about incorporating activities that specifically encourage reflection. Things like prompting learners to summarize what they've learned or to plan their next steps. That's crucial for supporting self-regulation in IVR.
So it's not enough to just throw someone into a virtual world and, hope for the best.
Right.
The experience needs to be structured in a way that encourages them to actively think about what they're doing.
To be metacognitive.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, so we've got these 6 factors. How do they actually lead to different kinds of learning outcomes? CAMIL talks about factual, conceptual, procedural knowledge, and transfer.
Right. Yeah. So those are really the four main types of learning outcomes.
Let's break those down a bit.
Okay. Factual knowledge, that's your basic understanding of facts, like what's the capital of France.
Okay.
Conceptual knowledge, that's more about understanding how things relate to each other.
Yeah.
The bigger picture, the principles behind things.
Okay.
Procedural knowledge is knowing how to do something, like riding a bike or performing surgery.
You show it, you do it.
Exactly. And transfer of knowledge, that's the holy grail, right?
Okay.
That's being able to take what you've learned and apply it in a completely different situation.
Got it. So how do those 6 factors we talked about, how do those influence these different types of learning outcomes?
All right, so situational interest, that's what hooks the learner in the beginning.
Uh,
It makes them pay attention, gets them engaged.
Makes them care?
Exactly. And that naturally helps with learning, regardless of what type of knowledge we're talking about.
Okay.
Then you've got intrinsic motivation, which fuels that sustained effort, that curiosity. And when people enjoy the learning process, they tend to adopt better learning strategies. They're more flexible in their thinking.
That makes sense.
Self-efficacy, the belief in your ability that directly affects how much effort you put in, how persistent you are when things get tough. And that has a positive impact on any kind of learning. Embodiment can really help solidify those neural pathways, especially for physical skills, procedural knowledge.
Right.
But it can also enhance how well we remember facts and concepts because it makes the experience more memorable.
Because you were there, you did it.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, high cognitive load can really hold you back. It makes it harder to acquire and transfer any kind of knowledge.
Makes sense.
And finally, there's self-regulation. That empowers learners to really take control of their own learning, which can lead to deeper understanding and better transfer.
Yeah.
But as we said before, this needs to be supported by the design of the IVR experience.
Right, right. You have to build in those opportunities for reflection and self-assessment. It sounds like all these pieces are interconnected.
They are.
It's not just about, oh, we have the latest VR tech. It's about how this tech interacts with our minds, with our feelings.
It's a complex ecosystem.
Exactly. So what does all this mean for the future of research and for those designing these IVR learning experiences?
For research, CAMIL provides a clear direction. We need to go beyond just comparing IVR to other methods.
Right.
We need to dig deeper into how IVR's unique affordances, that presence and agency, how those interact with specific instructional techniques.
I see.
We need to see if our existing theories about motivation and learning, if they hold up in these immersive environments.
Okay.
And we really need to untangle that web of relationships between things like embodiment, cognitive load, self-regulation.
Be specific.
Yes, absolutely. Research needs to be more precise about what kind of learning outcome is being measured when we're evaluating how effective IVR is.
So more granular, targeted research,
Right.
really looking at the specifics of why and how IVR might be particularly good for achieving different learning goals.
Exactly.
And for the folks who are actually designing these experiences.
Right. Well, for designers, there are some big takeaways.
Okay.
They need to make the most of IVR's strengths, right? Maximize that feeling of immersion, the fidelity of the environment, the amount of control the learner has. All of that can boost those feelings of presence and agency.
Okay.
But, and this is really important, they also have to be aware of that potential for cognitive overload.
Right, right.
And they need to design in ways that actively promote self-regulation. That means using some classic instructional design principles,
Like what?
like the coherence principle. Get rid of anything that's distracting, that's not relevant.
Keep it focused.
Yes. Then there's the signaling principle, guiding the learner's attention to the key information.
Okay.
You can incorporate things like pre-training to build some foundational knowledge before the experience.
I see.
Break up complex information into smaller chunks and use multiple modalities. Combine visuals, audio, and even things like touch. And don't forget about the embodiment principle, using virtual agents, characters that have human-like cues that can actually enhance learning.
Ah, interesting.
And again, so important to build in those specific opportunities for learners to, stop, reflect on what they've learned, summarize, maybe even teach a virtual peer.
So it's about striking a balance, right?
Yes, it is.
Harnessing the power of IVR, but also thoughtfully guiding the learning process and, minimizing those potential downsides.
It's a dance.
It's a dance. Now, CAMIL also touches on some important external factors that can influence all of this. What are some of those?
Yeah, so these are things that aren't core parts of CAMIL itself, but they can still have a big impact on the overall learning experience.
Okay.
Things like just how easy the system is to use. If the hardware is awkward or the software is hard to figure out, that can break the immersion.
Ruins the magic.
Yeah, totally. And then there are those broader social factors, right? Like how willing people are to actually use VR in the first place.
Right.
And then there are all those individual differences between learners. Their age, how prone they are to motion sickness,
Oh, yeah, right.
their working memory capacity, personality traits, how easily they get absorbed in things, their spatial abilities, and even whether they've used VR before. Because sometimes that novelty effect can wear off after a while.
Makes sense. Okay, so designers and researchers need to keep all these user-specific factors in mind, too. Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive into the cognitive effective model of immersive learning.
Yeah, it has.
To wrap it all up, what are some of the absolute key takeaways for our listener?
I think the most important thing to remember is that CAMIL gives us a way to understand how IVR can make learning happen. It's not just about the cool tech. It's about how that tech creates those feelings of presence and agency,
Right.
and then how those feelings influence all those crucial factors like interest, motivation, how our brains process information.
The psychology of it all.
Exactly. And those factors ultimately shape what we learn and how well we learn it. And the thing that ties all of this together that makes IVR truly effective for learning is good instructional design.
Yeah. It's not enough to just say, okay, everyone put on a headset, now you're going to learn better.
Right.
The how, those specific methods you use within that virtual environment, those are just as important, if not more important, than the capabilities of the tech itself.
Absolutely.
So with all this amazing potential in mind for truly engaging experiential learning that IVR offers, here's a final thought for you, dear listener. What are some learning challenges, some areas where a well-designed IVR experience could really offer something unique, something transformative compared to traditional methods?
Yeah, think beyond just the wow factor.
Right.
Think about where those special qualities of IVR can unlock deeper understanding, better skill development, more effective knowledge transfer. Think about where traditional approaches, they just fall short.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive today. And we encourage you, listener, to explore more of the research on the cognitive effective model of immersive learning and all those key principles of effective instructional design in VR.
Absolutely.
Until next time.